He wasn't a student. He wasn't even supposed to be in the building. But at 2 a.m., a vending machine boy rewrote Harvard's most broken equation and changed his life forever. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the East Wing of the Harvard School of Applied Mathematics slept like only old, brilliant buildings do. Quietly, heavily, with the kind of hush that wraps itself around time. The floors were freshly polished, reflecting dull yellow light from the ceiling. Security cameras blinked red every few seconds, like watchful eyes unwilling to sleep. There were no professors here now, no lectures, no students, just the whir of fluorescent tubes and the soft creak of a vending cart rolling over tile. That cart belonged to Noah Bennett, 24 years old, hoodie frayed at the wrists, eyes like blue steel worn down by weather, time, and everything in between. He was a vending machine refill worker, and this was his third delivery of the night. Red Bulls for the biomedical department, granola bars for the economics grad lounge. Whatever kept Harvard's elite moving, Noah restocked it, quietly, invisibly. He was not part of this world, not in any official way, no college degree, not even a GED. He had no transcript, no credentials, and no expectations. Just a part-time badge that said, vendor, no access past floor 1, and a life that had taught him to go unnoticed. And yet tonight, he noticed something. As he turned the corner into the fourth-floor hallway of Jefferson Hall, he saw it. Room 416, the lecture lab. The door was ajar. Light leaked out from under it like a whisper. Noah paused. He knew the rules. He was not to enter faculty rooms. He was not to speak to professors. He was not to touch anything. Unspoken laws written into every nod from his supervisor and every sideways glance from a passing student. But still, something tugged. He pushed the dolly aside, walked up to the door, leaned against the frame. Inside, the room was empty, except for the massive blackboard that stretched wall to wall, and what was on it didn't look like math. It looked like chaos, loops and lines, variables tangled through branching diagrams, graphs that folded into themselves, symbols that seemed less like equations and more like maps. It was beautiful and maddening. Noah stepped closer. He didn't know the terminology, but he knew the pattern. In the upper right corner, 3 variables danced in a constrained loop, something called non-convex resource allocation with time delay. He didn't know those words, but the shape, it was his, not from any textbook, from life. When he was 16, Noah had helped his mom run a small volunteer delivery service for local food pantries. No GPS, no apps, just a beat-up Civic, a clipboard, and maps pulled from gas stations. He'd started sketching routes on the back of receipts, ways to save gas, shave minutes, combine drop-offs without wasting fuel. He didn't know it was math. It was survival. And now, staring at Harvard's chalkboard, he saw the same inefficiencies, the same waste, the same mistakes he used to correct, not with formulas, but with instinct. His hand twitched. There was chalk resting near the edge of the table. A mug. A stack of notes. Someone had stepped out. Or given up. He shouldn't. He did. He picked up the chalk. His fingers were still sticky from soda syrup. He didn't erase anything, just circled a segment near the bottom. Drew a diagonal. Added a variable to a timing constraint. introduced a switch at a junction he somehow knew would rebalance the delay function. He didn't know the names, but he knew the weight, the feel of inefficiency, the burden of systems breaking under pressure. His breath grew shallow as he worked. 6 minutes passed. Then he stopped. He stepped back, looked at the board. He hadn't fixed it. Not all of it. But something important, had shifted. Then he pulled a napkin from his hoodie pocket, the same one he'd used to wipe his nose an hour earlier. He scribbled a note. "You're locking the nodes too early. Let the time cost float through D, then reverse priority at junction F. Should balance the constraint without breaking flow. I think N." He folded it once, left it on the desk, and walked out. No applause, no realization, no grand epiphany, just one kid in a hoodie returning to his dolly, wheels squeaking against the floor. 2 hours later, at 4:12 a.m., Dean Daniel Whitmore, chair of mathematics at Harvard, returned to room 416. He had been working on that equation for almost a year. It was meant to be his centerpiece at the Global Mathematics Symposium in Zurich, a breakthrough in optimization theory. But the model kept breaking. That night, he'd given up, left the room in frustration. He was prepared to start over, and then he saw the board. Different. Tiny marks, barely noticeable, but precise. Right. He stared, then moved to the desk. The napkin was there. He opened it, read, reread. He ran the updated variables through the simulation in his mind. Then, on paper, forward, backward. It worked. His hands trembled. Who the hell was N? Noah didn't think about it again. He finished his deliveries, clocked out, and went home to the tiny apartment he shared with his foster sister, Maya, who was in her 2nd year of nursing school. They lived paycheck to paycheck, heating water in the microwave to save on the electric bill. He didn't sleep. He never did after long shifts. He sat by the window, cracked open to the Boston chill, and tried to forget the blackboard. But he couldn't. Something in him had shifted, too. The next day, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Bennett, this is Dean Whitmore from Harvard. I believe you left me a napkin." Noah almost dropped the phone. The dean continued, voice low, deliberate. "I'd like you to come in tonight, room 416, 7 o'clock p.m. And Mr. Bennett, don't bring the cart." Noah Bennett stood in front of room 416 at exactly 6:58 p.m. The same room, the same building. But tonight, everything felt different. He wasn't wearing his hoodie. Instead, he wore the only collared shirt he owned, a wrinkled black button-down that had been ironed earlier that afternoon with a towel and a borrowed hot plate. His fingers were clean, but they wouldn't stop shaking. His stomach had been too anxious for dinner, and his brain too busy imagining worst-case scenarios. Why did the dean call him back? He reached for the door, but before he could knock, it opened. Standing there was Dean Daniel Whitmore, no longer in his usual tweed sweater and coffee-stained khakis, but in a crisp navy suit and glasses that caught the hallway light. He said only 2 words. "Come in." Noah stepped inside slowly, half expecting an interrogation, half expecting security. Instead, he saw 2 chairs, a pot of tea, one manila folder, and across the top of the chalkboard, in clean, bold writing, preliminary resolution, Bennett variation. He blinked. What is this? Whitmore didn't answer right away. He gestured to the table. Sit. Noah did. Whitmore poured him a mug of tea. Earl Grey. The smell alone steadied Noah's breath. The dean sat across from him, tapping the folder once before opening it. "I've been at Harvard for 22 years, he said, "and I have never seen anything like what you did 2 nights ago." Noah swallowed. "I didn't mean to do anything wrong." "You didn't," Whitmore said, sliding the folder toward him. Inside were screenshots of the chalkboard, side-by-side comparisons. Noah's additions in a different color, simulations, snapshots, notes, and at the very back, something that made his chest tighten. His background check. Noah stared at the page. No criminal record, no college record. Just a long line of part-time jobs, food pantry work, shelter visits, an expired learner's permit, and a single note under education. Dropped out sophomore year. "I didn't finish high school," Noah said softly. "I know. I've never taken calculus. I know that too. Then, why am I here?" Whitmore leaned forward. "Because you did something no one else here could. You didn't memorize formulas. You felt them. You saw the flow. And that kind of instinct, raw, intuitive mathematics, that's rare. And when it appears, we don't ignore it." Noah shook his head slowly. "I'm not a mathematician." "You already are," Whitmore said. "You just don't know the names of your tools yet." The room fell silent. Noah reached for the tea. His hand steadied as the warmth spread through his chest. "I don't know what you want from me," he said finally. "Nothing," Whitmore replied, "but I do have something to offer." He reached under the folder and pulled out a stapled packet. Across the top it read, "Harvard Extension School, Conditional Admission." Noah's eyes widened. "If you want it," Whitmore said, "we can fast-track you through admissions. You'll need to pass a placement test next month. If you do, tuition is covered. Room and board. Sponsored. There's a donor interested in supporting unconventional candidates. You'd be the first." Noah stared at the packet. He wasn't sure if his fingers were trembling from disbelief or hope. "I don't have transcripts." "We'll deal with that." "I don't even have a GED." "We'll deal with that too. What matters is that you're here, and that you have something we can't teach, vision." Noah let out a nervous laugh. "You're serious?" "As a theorem." Whitmore stood. The conversation was over. The offer had been made. He walked Noah to the door. As Noah stepped into the hallway, the dean called after him. "One more thing," he said. "You said on the napkin, 'I think.' Next time, don't doubt it. You knew." Noah walked home under a sky that had never looked bigger. The buildings didn't seem so intimidating now, not because they had changed, but because something inside him had. Maya was already asleep when he got home. He didn't wake her. He just sat at the tiny kitchen table with the packet in his hands, reading every line like it might disappear. That night, he wrote a message to the only person who ever truly believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. Mira, his foster sister, now in nursing school in Philadelphia. He typed, "Harvard offered me something tonight. Not a job, A seat. I think I'm going to take it. Then he hit send. And for the first time in his life, Noah didn't feel like he was breaking into someone else's future. He felt like he was finally walking into his own. Noah didn't quit vending. Not yet. He needed the income, needed to feel useful. But everything else in his life started bending toward one goal, the placement test. He found a used TI-84 calculator at a pawn shop. It still had a girl's name etched in the back, Christristan S., and a scratched screen. It didn't matter. It worked. He downloaded free PDFs from MIT OpenCourseWare and watched grainy YouTube lectures on spotty Wi-Fi at a local cafe. The baristas got used to him. The guy with the hoodie and 5 notebooks who always tipped in change. He wrote at night, during breaks and between deliveries, optimization models, network constraints. He drew maps, not problems, because for him, they were the same. Still, the self-doubt came like clockwork. Late one Tuesday, he passed a group of undergrads in the corridor. They laughed when they saw him holding a stack of problem sets. "Hey, vending guy," one called out. "Those for recycling, or are you actually trying to read them?" Another chimed in, "Careful, he might solve the coffee machine next." Noah said nothing, just kept walking. But their words followed him. Not everyone at Harvard welcomed miracles. Some only believed in resumes. At home, he kept his studies a secret from Maya. She was already stretched thin between night shifts and clinicals. When she asked why he stayed up all night scribbling notes, he shrugged and said, "Just trying to learn some stuff." But one night, she caught him watching a recorded seminar on nonlinear optimization. The equations scrolled across the screen like alien glyphs. She looked at him, tired and curious. "Noah, are you trying to get into school again?" He paused, then nodded. Maya's face softened, but concern settled into her voice. "You know how many times you've been let down, right?" "Yeah," he whispered. "And you know what they'll say when they see your file." "I do." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then make sure that when they slam the door, because they might, you're ready to knock again, or build your own way in." He didn't answer. But that night he stayed up until sunrise working on a timing matrix that could compress 5 deliveries into 3 route loops. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. 1 week before the test, Dean Whitmore checked in. He found Noah in the break room, sitting next to the vending machine with a peanut butter sandwich balanced on his knee and a half-torn printout on his lap. "You look like someone studying differential timing models during his lunch break," the dean said. Noah smiled weakly. "Trying." Whitmore sat beside him. "There's a lot of talk going around," he said. "Some faculty support this. Some think it's unorthodox." Noah's throat tightened. "They say I don't belong?" Whitmore met his eyes. "Some do. One even asked if we were lowering standards." Noah looked down. "Are you?" "No," Whitmore said firmly. "We're expanding the definition of potential." That night, Noah stayed late after his route. He sat in room 416 alone, drawing and erasing on the board until his hand cramped. The night before the placement test, it rained. Not a gentle drizzle, the kind of rain that washed away excuses. Noah didn't sleep. He packed a notebook, 2 pencils, and a borrowed thrift store shirt. The test was at 8 a.m. in room 208. 10 candidates, 2 seats. He arrived at 7:43 a.m., the first one there. Slowly, others came. A girl in an MIT hoodie, a boy whispering equations, a kid in designer shoes scrolling notes on a tablet. Noah didn't have a tablet, or notes, or breakfast. He had memory, grit, and a napkin he'd kept folded in his pocket, the one from room 416, now worn and soft. When the proctor led them in, the room was cold. Blank notepads, sealed envelopes, and no calculators. Just courage. "You may begin," the voice said. Noah opened the test. Problem 1. Formulate an inverse delay model for a 3-node system with binary state transitions. He blinked, then smiled. It looked like a delivery map. He didn't write formulas first. He drew circles, labeled them like he used to. Warehouse, stop A, stop B, arrows for flow, dashed lines for delay. Then he wrote the math. It wasn't fast, but it was his. Problem 4 broke him. It was theoretical, dense with symbols he barely recognized. His pen hovered. His heart raced. 10 minutes passed. Then he closed his eyes and thought of the Civic, the trunk full of bread, the timing routes, the nights his mom wept when a shelter ran out of space. He flipped the page. "If stop D carries refrigerated goods," he whispered, "delay can't exceed 6 minutes. And F must reroute." He turned theory into story, story into structure. By the last page, his hand shook. The final question asked, "Describe a system in your life that required optimization and how you solved it, without formal training." Noah stared at the paper. Then he wrote, "I didn't know it was called optimization. I just knew if I got it wrong, someone wouldn't eat." 2 days after the test, Noah was restocking the vending machines in the law school building when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He wiped his hands on his jeans, expecting a delivery confirmation or maybe Maya checking in. Instead, he saw it. Harvard Extension Program. No subject line. He stared. Heart thudding, he tapped it open. "Congratulations, Mr. Bennett. You have been admitted into the fall term under full scholarship. Placement score, top 2%. Welcome to Harvard." Noah read it twice, then a third time. And then he sat down on the tile floor next to the vending machine, still holding a half-loaded tray of protein bars. He didn't move for 10 minutes, not because he didn't believe it, but because, for the first time, he finally did. The first person he called was Mira. She picked up on the second ring, breathless from climbing stairs. "Noah? Everything okay?" "They accepted me." There was silence, then a soft gasp. "You mean Harvard?" "Full ride. Top 2%. She didn't scream. She didn't laugh. She just said, "I knew it. I always knew." Noah closed his eyes, blinking fast. "Thanks for being the only one who did." "You're not alone anymore, Noah. Remember that." The first day of class came like a storm. Noah walked past the same vending machines he once filled, now with a backpack too small for his notes and a shirt he'd ironed with a pot lid. He was 5 minutes early to room 303, Applied Nonlinear Systems with Professor Ellis Monroe. It was the only advanced class with an open seat. And it was infamous. GPA Destroyer. The kind of course seniors avoided unless absolutely required. Noah walked in, scanning the tiered seating. Students with sleek laptops, designer jackets, eyes that didn't linger. He found a spot in the far corner. Invisible. At 10:58 a.m. sharp, Professor Monroe entered. No greeting, no roll call. Just, let's begin with chaos. He launched into equations like throwing sparks. Symbols flew across the board. Noah scrambled to keep up, filling half a page before realizing he was 2 steps behind. By minute 20, the student in front of him had already stopped writing. Noah didn't. His hand cramped. His brain burned. But something else inside him caught fire too. This wasn't vending. This was the circuitry behind vending. Halfway through class, Monroe turned, chalk still in hand. "Take the constraint model from earlier," he said, "and reframe it using harmonic structure. Identify the stabilization point." Silence. A boy in the 3rd row raised his hand. Varsity jacket. Confident grin. His name tag read, Jason Pierce. "Not solvable," Jason said. "You'd have to toss the non-linear component." Monroe tilted his head. "Are you sure?" Jason nodded. "Pretty sure." "Anyone else?" More silence. Noah's mind whirred. Jason was wrong. If you shifted the constraint just right in time, you didn't need to discard anything. Just flip the pattern. But he said nothing. Not yet. When class ended, Monroe spoke without turning. "This problem is solvable. Prove it by Friday. Extra credit." Noah didn't care about credit. He cared about truth. That night, after restocking 2 buildings, he sat in the common room of his dorm, surrounded by coffee cups and open notebooks. He didn't sleep. By Thursday morning, he had it. 3 pages. Messy. Raw. But functional. He printed it at the public library and dropped it on Monroe's desk before class. The professor glanced at the top. "Bennett, you're the transfer student." Noah nodded. Monroe gave a short grunt and slid the paper into a folder. No praise, no comment. But Noah didn't need it. He already knew. Next Monday, everything shifted. Monroe scribbled across the board, then paused. "As Bennett demonstrated last week," heads turned. Jason did a double take. His jaw tightened. Noah kept his eyes down. But inside, something bloomed. The next week, Noah found his name on the board again. Not as a mistake, not as graffiti, but as reference. Monroe began weaving Noah's timing structure into the lectures like it had always been there. Not as novelty, just as logic. He never praised. He never explained. He just used it. And people noticed, especially Jason Pierce. The tension showed first in the way Jason glanced sideways in class, then in the silence when Monroe casually said, "As Bennett modeled." By Wednesday, it turned to open scorn. After class, Jason cornered Noah near the stairwell. "You know this place isn't going to make exceptions forever, right?" Noah blinked. "What do you mean?" Jason smirked. "You're a vending guy with a lucky guess. They'll stop clapping when the novelty wears off." Noah didn't answer. He didn't need to. Jason was louder in insecurity than in truth. But the words still stuck. That night, Noah returned to room 416. Empty again. Quiet. Familiar. He didn't try to solve anything. He just sat. Let the silence hold him. Let the chalkboard breathe back. He wrote one line. Truth doesn't need to shout. It survives in the margins. Friday, Monroe assigned a group project. Systems modeling, variable constraints, a real-world optimization scenario with limited inputs and dynamic failure points. Noah scanned the room for his group. Jason raised a hand. We'll take Bennett. A few students chuckled. Monroe nodded absently. Jason turned to Noah and smiled a little too wide. Let's see if vending schedules scale up to actual theory. They met the next evening in the basement of Lowell Hall. Jason came with a MacBook, a printed proposal, and the kind of tone that made it clear Noah wasn't invited to speak. Here's what we'll do, Jason said. Brute force computation, matrix overlays, keep it straightforward. Noah cleared his throat. What if we tried dynamic pattern isolation first? If we group transitions by constraint thresholds, we might avoid the cascade. Jason looked at him like he was suggesting magic. We're doing it my way. So Noah nodded and stayed silent. Then, that night, he built his own model. Quietly. On notebook paper, at the cafe, at the library, on the floor of the vending supply closet between deliveries. He didn't sleep. Again. On Monday, they submitted both versions. Jason's model, elegant code, glossy paper, exact formulas. Noah's, handwritten pages, diagrams, margin notes, raw logic. Grades came back Thursday. Jason's 78, Noah's 100. Jason stared at the results in silence. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. After class, Noah stayed behind. Monroe was erasing the board. Professor, Noah said, I know I wasn't expected to last here, but I want to build something, not just solve. Monroe paused, chalk in hand. Then stop waiting for permission. Start drawing. So Noah stepped forward. He picked up a piece of chalk, and on the empty board, he sketched something from memory. Not from Harvard, not from theory, from home. 3 drop points, 1 central hub, a failed relay. He mapped delays, reroutes, thresholds. It wasn't a class problem. It was life. Then he stepped back. A voice behind him said, Was that your solution last week? Noah turned. A girl stood in the doorway. Curly dark hair, tired eyes, a notebook hugged to her chest. I'm Leah, she said. That recursion pattern you did, I've been trying to build that for 2 semesters. Can you walk me through it? Noah blinked. No one had ever asked him that before. Sure, he said. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a visitor in someone else's world. He felt like a builder. The following week, Monroe didn't start class with equations. Instead, he scribbled a single sentence across the board. Some systems aren't broken. They're waiting to be re-seen. Then, without preamble, he turned to the class. Who here can tell me what that means in a live system? Silence. Noah looked down at his notes. He could answer. He knew exactly what it meant. But before he could raise his hand, Monroe spoke again. Bennett? 20 heads turned. Noah looked up. Sir? Monroe gestured. I want you to explain the recursive trigger loop from your drop point sketch. The one with the rerouted constraint node. Do it from the front. The room froze. Jason leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. A girl whispered, "He's a freshman, right? Or not even." Noah stood slowly. His hands shook, not from fear, but from weight. He walked to the board, picked up a piece of chalk, and began to draw. "This is a 3-node system," he began, voice steadying as he went. "A, B, and C. Traditional models treat delays as isolated, but in resource-limited pathways, delay becomes recursive. It feeds into itself. Unless we resequence trigger points, the entire cycle collapses by the second loop." He paused, then added, "I learned that trying to deliver 13 bread donations before one soup kitchen closed at 6. No one laughed. Monroe stepped forward when Noah finished. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just said, "Saturday, 9 a.m., you're joining the department's logic systems seminar. I'll email the details." Noah blinked. "Isn't that for graduate students?" Monroe shrugged. "So?" The seminar was held in a forgotten wing of the math department, past a dusty lounge and under flickering lights. The kind of room no one bragged about, but the kind real ideas were born in. 6 people sat around the table. 5 were older than Noah. 1 had already published a paper. Professor Ma, visiting from Stanford, led the session. Noah stood near the whiteboard, nervously clutching a crumpled page of notes. Then he looked up, and something inside him clicked. He didn't need to perform. He just needed to tell the truth. So he drew. The system he described wasn't hypothetical. It was built from the days he and Maya rationed gas money, trying to deliver food without running out of fuel. He didn't quote theories. He didn't reference textbooks. He talked about threshold collapses and what happens when one delivery delay pushes every other past the failure point. By the end of his explanation, 3 of the grad students were taking notes. Professor Ma leaned back, arms folded. "You're modeling adaptive constraint memory," he said. Noah blinked. I'm what?" "It's a theory I've been chasing for 2 years," Ma said. "You just made it work in 5 minutes, with chalk." The next morning, Monroe dropped a slip of paper on Noah's desk before class. It read, "Wednesday, room 117, 10 p.m. You'll want to see what happens when nobody's watching." That night, room 117 was almost empty. Just 5 students, a cracked chalkboard, a pot of cheap coffee, and at the front, Professor Evelyn Ross. She was known for her work in recursive system trees, but not for sharing. Yet here she was, sipping tea and sketching broken formulas with a weary hand. Noah sat in the back, quiet, watching, until Ross sighed and said, "None of this works. The trigger node folds too early." Noah raised a tentative hand. What if it's not folding? What if it's returning to origin with a reversed cost weight? Ross froze, then slowly turned. "Come up here." Noah did. Chalk in hand, he bent into the diagram, reversed the arrow, redrew the loop. Ross watched every movement, then stepped back. "God," she whispered, "that's it." And just like that, Noah wasn't visiting Harvard anymore. He was contributing to it. By mid-October, Noah's name wasn't just whispered in seminars. It was being mentioned in passing between departments. Professor Ma referred to him as the recursive kid during a podcast. Monroe began inviting him to sit in on faculty discussions. Even Dean Whitmore had asked him to help revise an introductory module on optimization models. But then, it happened. On a quiet Monday morning, Noah opened his locker in the maintenance hallway, the one he still used to stash vending supplies, and found a manila folder missing. It had been his personal notes, 50 pages of an evolving theory he'd been sketching for weeks. It wasn't for a class. It wasn't even polished. But it was his. Gone. He checked the lounge, the recycling bin. Nothing. He told himself it didn't matter, but it did. 2 days later, a rumor reached him. A third-year PhD student named Jason Pierce, yes, that Jason, had submitted a draft paper to Professor Ma's assistant titled Layered Constraint Memory in Time-Delayed Systems. Noah's heart dropped. It was his title, word for word. He didn't storm in. He didn't yell. Instead, he stayed up 2 nights straight and rewrote the entire paper from memory. But this time, he improved it. Noah stapled it himself and handed it directly to Ma during his Friday office hours. He said only this: "I think someone submitted a version of this without knowing what it really meant. Here's mine." Ma read the first page, then the second, then looked up. "You wrote this from scratch?" Noah nodded. "And the diagrams, did you copy them?" "No. They came from what I lived." Ma's expression didn't shift, but his voice lowered. "I'll look into it." The following Monday, Noah walked past the department lounge and paused. Something in the trash caught his eye. It was his original file, water-stained, pages torn, but still legible. On page 12, a brown coffee ring and the margin doodle of a delivery route. His. He picked it up and walked straight to Ma's office. Ma examined both documents silently. Then, from his drawer, he pulled out a sealed envelope. "Jason submitted this version 2 days after your folder went missing. Same core. But the math is diluted. He didn't understand your boundary logic." Noah felt heat rise in his throat. "So what now?" "We convene a faculty panel," Ma said. "If it's confirmed, he'll be removed from authorship, and you'll be credited in full, quietly or publicly. Your call." Noah didn't speak. He just nodded. The panel met that Friday. 5 professors, 2 files, 1 empty chair. Noah sat in it. "We found significant overlap between the 2 submissions," Professor Ross announced. "But only one contains authentic structural reasoning and matches with the initial sketch found in the lounge bin." She slid a document forward. In bold at the top, authorship confirmed. Noah Bennett. He exhaled. "And Jason?" he asked quietly. "That's not your concern," Ross said. But later, Noah passed by the grad student offices and saw Jason clearing out his desk. Silent. Face unreadable. That night, room 117 was quiet again. Noah picked up a piece of chalk and wrote 1 line on the board. "Integrity isn't a theory. It's a proof that survives silence." Underneath, someone later added, "Carter's Law." Word spread. Not in headlines or announcements, but in whispers, in nods, in quiet acknowledgement during problem sets and seminar discussions. Carter's Law was no longer a joke. It had become shorthand for elegant logic rooted in lived experience. And Noah, he kept showing up. Each Tuesday and Friday morning, he still worked the vending route, still restocked the same machines, still carried boxes of granola bars past the same students who once laughed at him. Some still looked past him, but some didn't. One rainy afternoon, Noah passed by room 117 and found the door already cracked open. Inside, 6 students were gathered around a whiteboard, debating a recursive delay algorithm. Someone had brought cookies. Someone else had drawn a heart beside a proof. On the far wall was a printed sign, taped up carefully. The listening room. Come solve. Noah stepped inside, soaked hoodie dripping. Leah waved him over. "You started this," she whispered. "Might as well keep building." That night, Dean Whitmore called him in. Not to a meeting, not to a reprimand, but to something stranger. The dean closed his office door, then handed Noah a small envelope. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here," he said. Noah opened it. Inside was a card. Harvard Department of Applied Mathematics, Adjunct Instructional Fellow. Systems Design, probationary semester. Noah blinked. "I don't have a degree," he said softly. "You have something better," Whitmore replied. "You have students quoting you. You have professors citing your structure, and you have every reason to say no, but you keep saying yes." Noah didn't tell anyone right away. Instead, he walked to the dorm kitchen and made tea, sat in silence. Let it settle. Later that night, he opened a message thread that had gone silent for nearly a year. "Mira." He typed, "They offered me something. Again. But this time it's not just a seat. It's a board. A place to teach. A place to hold space for someone like me. I think I'm going to say yes." Then he added, "You were the first to listen, so this moment belongs to you too." She replied 5 minutes later, "Say yes, Noah, and leave the door open behind you." Friday evening, room 117 was full. Some students brought friends, others brought questions. Noah brought chalk. He stood by the board, not as a genius, not as a symbol, just as himself. He wrote, "What if the answer isn't brilliance, but belonging?" He turned. "Let's talk about recursion." And the room listened. 2 months into his role as a probationary instructional fellow, Noah stood outside room 305, the large seminar hall reserved for visiting lecturers and departmental showcases. Inside were over 70 students, undergrads, grad students, a few faculty members. Even Dean Whitmore sat in the back row, quietly sipping tea. Noah wasn't there to observe this time. He was there to teach. He carried no laptop, no slides, just chalk, and a single idea, that math wasn't about memorizing the language of certainty. It was about listening to the silence between knowns. The seminar title had surprised everyone. Optimization without instructions, the systems we solve without knowing. It sounded abstract, even odd. But the room was packed. Noah stepped to the board, took a breath. "Most of us think of equations as things we solve," he began. "But sometimes equations solve us." He drew a diagram, a 3-node system, familiar but altered. The room tilted forward. "This model started in the back of a delivery van," he continued. "In the quiet, in the cold, with a clipboard and too many places to reach in too little time. I didn't call it optimization. I called it staying alive." Some students smiled. Others blinked slowly, leaning into the rawness of it. 20 minutes in, he posed a challenge. Split into groups, he said. Design a system that optimizes not just flow, but dignity. Prioritize delay where it causes the least harm. Apply recursion only when choice disappears. Students looked confused, intrigued. Then slowly, ideas began forming. Leah raised her hand. Are we allowed to incorporate behavioral factors? Noah smiled. You're encouraged to. Jason, yes, still here, spoke next. Is this still math? Noah didn't flinch. Yes, it's the math we forgot to call by name. After the seminar, students didn't rush out. They stayed. A circle formed near the chalkboard. Someone passed around markers. Someone else opened a laptop. And then, without prompting, they began designing an app, a simple one, based on Noah's lecture. Something to help food banks route donations more efficiently. Someone called it CarterNet as a joke. But it stuck. Later that week, Noah received an email from a research lead at MIT. Read your seminar notes. Intriguing structure. Ever thought about collaborative applications in AI adaptive logistics? He hadn't. Until now. That Friday, the chalkboard in room 117 was filled before Noah even arrived. Students had written, optimization isn't just numbers. It's noticing what needs to matter. And below that, what would the system look like if we stopped pretending people were outliers? Noah stepped in, coffee in hand, stopped, stared, and smiled. He wrote under all of it. Then maybe the system would finally work. The first snow of winter fell quietly over Cambridge the morning Noah received the final envelope. It wasn't from Harvard, or MIT, or the research consortium in Zurich that had begun quoting his work. It was from Maya. Handwritten, sealed in a soft blue envelope with slightly smudged ink. Inside, just a card. And one sentence. You delivered more than soda, Noah. You delivered a future. He sat on the steps of the mathematics building, letting the snow gather on his jacket, the letter pressed to his chest. He hadn't cried in years. He did now. That afternoon, Dean Whitmore caught him in the hallway. Thought you should be the first to know, he said. Noah raised an eyebrow. Whitmore smiled. You've been approved. Full faculty offer. Lecturer in Applied Systems Theory. Starts next term. Noah's breath caught. No probation? Just precedent. They shook hands, not as mentor and student, but as peers. That evening, room 117 hosted one final session before the winter break. Students packed the room. Even some faculty came. Monroe stood in the back, nodding quietly, arms crossed. Noah walked to the board one last time. I used to think systems were puzzles you solved in isolation, he began. But the best ones, they're built together. He turned to the board and wrote, what if learning was designed by the ones who weren't supposed to get in? Silence. Then someone whispered, then maybe no one would be left out. Noah smiled. Exactly. He stayed behind after everyone left. Room 117 was quiet again, just the sound of the wind brushing the old windows. He erased the board slowly, like a farewell. But before he left, he drew one last diagram. 3 nodes, connected by looping lines. In the center, he wrote, the system is open. Then, in the corner, barely visible. N. Bennett. He walked back out into the snow. No hoodie, no cart, no napkin in his pocket, just a key in his hand. To room 117, to a future he had built, one line at a time. And to every student who'd ever been told they weren't supposed to be in the room, the end.